At Elevate One Consulting, we specialize in executive, business, and accountability coaching tailored just for you. Discover the power of enhanced leadership skills, improved performance, and increased self-awareness. Our expert coaches will help you navigate challenges, articulate your vision, and establish a work-life balance. With Elevate One Consulting, you get proven methodologies to drive growth and success, insightful feedback and personalized strategies, clear goals, and actionable plans. Whether you're a C-suite executive, business owner, or entrepreneur, our coaching programs are designed to help you thrive. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com and take your first steps towards a focused future. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Welcome to The Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddy Paul Thomas, and this week I had the chance to sit down with a pillar of the Charlotte, North Carolina community, Kathy Rogers, to discuss building nonprofit community. Kathy is the owner of Rogers GPS Consulting, LLC, focusing on assisting nonprofits in fulfilling their mission through growth, performance, and success. She has 25 years of nonprofit executive experience, including successfully managing Mental Health America of Central Carolinas and Charlotte, North Carolina. During her tenure at MHA, Rogers secured funding to open a free counseling center focused on serving marginalized communities. The organization thrived under her leadership, growing and adding capacity during the COVID-19 pandemic, when many other organizations had to shut down their doors. It's a great conversation, and honestly, I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us on The Unbroken Place, Kathy. We've had some really cool conversations in the past, and I'm really excited to have you on the show. Today's topic is building community. Why is it important? And I don't think I could have a better guest on than you for what you've been doing. So thank you for joining us.
I appreciate that so much, Eddy, and I'm excited to see where this discussion goes, and just really appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, why don't you start, in terms of just kind of letting people know who you are and what you've done. Start with telling them how or what inspired you to dedicate your career to nonprofit work and particularly in roles that focus on community and collaboration.
I think the community part has always been kind of in my heart. I was in the corporate world for a long time, doing corporate communications and investor relations for a large textile manufacturer in Virginia. And even in that work, I was in charge of community engagement and community relations. And I had the most fun when I was doing things out in the community, kind of building partnerships even then. I loved building school business partnerships. And one that was really exciting when I was working at Talltex, that's the name of the company. We worked with an elementary school, and we made activewear, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and
Oh, nice.
we taught the kids math and chemistry through a tie-dye t-shirt project.
Nice.
So we gave the kids t-shirts. They learned about weighing dyes and chemicals. They learned different math. But then at the end, they divided up into teams and became their own corporation and had to create a marketing plan and make presentations about this new product that they had,
Nice.
these tie-dye t-shirts. And what it did, it brought staff, students, but also a lot of our employees who never got to engage in a project like that, to be creative and innovative in teaching these children. We looked at the Virginia Standards of Learning and really tried to incorporate those into this project. How many different things could we touch on in the project? And one of the standards of learning is actually public speaking and getting up and doing those presentations. So
Yeah.
we won a statewide governor's award with that project. We won a National American Textile Manufacturers Institute award for that
Wow.
project. So even in that corporate environment, I really loved engaging community and different partners in
Hmm.
addressing issues. And this in particular was bringing, how kids sit and go, why do I need to learn this? I'm never going to use this.
Yes.
And I always
Yes.
loved the idea of showing through a business lens how you're going to could use this in the future. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the issue we were trying to work on there, and kind of as nonprofits, community and collaboration are just at the heart of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And now that you mention it, there's probably at least a half dozen teachers I need to apologize to publicly for saying I will never use this type of math or, any of the other things that I've learned in
And it may
school
be
that,
true about some
yeah,
things, but at least
yeah,
we need to have see things through a different lens
yeah,
sometimes,
exactly.
and
And
see how we use it in the real world.
exactly. There's certainly some things that I could glean from those, just kind of tying things together through, oh, I never would have thought I'd use
Yeah,
chemistry,
yeah.
and what I thought I would be doing. And yeah, some of it actually worked out. But, you and I initially crossed paths when you were doing some amazing work for Mental Health America of Central Carolinas. And I was wondering if you could share one of those defining moments from your time with them that kind of highlighted the importance of community collaboration for you.
Um, well, the project that I'm most proud of, and which required a lot of collaboration and community work, was the free counseling center that we opened in January of 2023.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of really over the course of my time at MHA, I retired in February from there. Really learning that marginalized communities or communities of color don't have as much access to mental health care, but there's
Hmm.
also a lot of stigma around mental
Yeah.
health. So with that project, even before the RFP for American Rescue Plan funds became available,
Hmm.
this is sort of a pandemic story too. I'm sitting in this building, this suite of offices by myself, and kind of learning as a leader. I think we all evolved during the pandemic that
Yeah. Yeah.
work isn't going to look the same way it did pre-pandemic as it will post-pandemic. So I
Right.
really did learn that my staff and team could be very effective and productive in a hybrid or remote situation. For
Hmm.
me, I love coming into the office, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm sitting in this office by myself, but as nonprofit leaders, we constantly need to be thinking about how we're utilizing our resources. And that includes hard assets that we have.
Hmm.
So knowing we had this space that we may not be utilizing, it kind of was taking form in my mind that maybe we could bring the community together and create something
Yeah.
that could serve these marginalized communities in different by providing free counseling. The other issue that we looked at was the pipeline of clinicians of color. How can we strengthen that? And so part of the model was to have a partnership with Johnson C. Smith University and UNC to
Hmm.
provide interns who are getting their masters in social work, these real life internships where
Yeah.
they're learning on the job, doing counseling in this free counseling center. So they got some really great experience. So even before the RFP for those funds came through Mecklenburg County, we had already brought together representatives of those two universities. We have brought in an evaluator to help us think about what should we be measuring if we do this.
Hmm.
Um, we had a board member who had a background in behavioral health that we brought on. When the grant came due, we partnered with Little Architectural. I mean, we were on a tight deadline. I was walking through that space with my laptop and camera. They never had to come and see it. They just kind of looked at it that way, and Rogers Builders came on board to help us with that grant. So it was a lot of partnership and
Yeah.
collaboration just to get that grant done in the first place. And we even were able to spend quite a bit of money for our organization for a big ad campaign to also, begin to let uh, people of color see how important it was to take care of yourself and take care of your mental health.
Yeah.
For me, that was the most exciting example of something at Mental Health America Central Carolinas, which I'll call MHA,
Hmm.
um, that brought in that component of really needing to create this collaborative network of people just to get the funding and be successful with it.
Yeah. It was, that was one of the things that kind of caught my attention, the efforts that were made there, because you mentioned stigma, which is absolutely
Yeah,
true and pervasive. The other part of that, and maybe it's an extension of the stigma, or maybe it's a separate entity, but it's trust.
yeah,
The one thing that I learned as I was working with families and throughout the Midwest and quite frankly all over the country is that when they don't see someone who looks like them or speaks like
that's
them,
right. Hmm.
there is going to be an initial hurdle that you have to get over, and that came in the form of trust, especially as it pertained to mental health.
E-
Um,
Exactly. And if you think about generational trauma
mhm.
and things that have happened within the healthcare system with
Yeah,
communities of color that created that lack of trust.
absolutely.
But a lot of people aren't aware that much of what clinicians who are in school are learning is more through the lens of a white person.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and the biggest way to jump right in with someone in therapy is to look like that person, be able to
Yeah.
connect with them culturally. So, that's why it was
Mm.
so important for us to give these interns this opportunity to get some really important on on the ground experience in helping communities. And what we wanted as part of our measurement, would you consider going uh, your career working in a community based mental health facility like this?
Mm. Brilliant. I love it's so forward thinking. When it comes to mental health, uh, a lot of the efforts that I've seen are more band-aids for things that require surgery.
Yeah,
And to learn what you were doing with MHA, it was my in my career, probably one of the first times that I saw an organization really focus on diagnosing what the actual issues are for the community, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, let's try these things that have worked in
right.
general communities. And it was more focused. And I love the results. I love that this is something that will benefit generations to come.
Yeah. And we do have to be focused as nonprofit leaders, but we also need to be open to being able to pivot and be flexible
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
Um, I will be readily admit that I don't like long range strategic plans. I feel like
Yeah.
we need to have be able to pivot. But we also need to. Communities are changing. The landscape is changing. So many things are
Hmm.
constantly changing. I mean,
Hmm.
the pandemic was a big in your face
Right.
change. So if
Yeah.
as leaders we're not ready to change with whatever's happening in our
Hmm.
community, we begin to lose relevancy. We begin to, you know, not be, we begin to be reactive rather than proactive in addressing
Exactly.
things.
Exactly. That agility is so important, to be able to move and understand that your audience is changing as well,
That's right.
where they gather their information from.
Yeah.
The one of the more, I wouldn't call it frustrating, just kind of an eye opening moment was working in the Midwest, where this person we were working with had gone online in the library and they had self-diagnosed themselves with like 12 or 13 different
Mm,
issues. And it's like, no, no, okay, come on, let's
yeah,
talk. And that's where all your active listening comes in, and all the other things that allow you to better diagnose what the actual
right.
issues are. So um, being able to, if you're going to have a long-term plan, a strategic plan of 5 to 10 years or whatever it is, to understand that thing needs to be able to adjust to what's going on in the
Yeah.
landscape. It's just critical.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
I think of your tenure also with United Way. Um, you had some key strategies, and I'd love for you to kind of unpack what you utilized in terms of strategy to transform the organization into more of a catalyst for change.
Definitely. And I was just thinking about United Way when we were thinking about the need to pivot, to change.
Mm.
I always told people that I wish I had one of those machines like they had in the movie Men in Black, where
Oh,
and
the
they
flashy
forget
thingy.
everything before them
Yeah.
because with United Way for so long it had been this traditional pass through almost of money. People would give money to United Way, and then United Way would allocate it to a set agencies.
Hmm.
And just on a global and local scale, I'm really proud of the work we did. This is a rural community, but we were really um, not afraid to change and
Yeah.
to um, become more focused on community impact, where
Hmm.
you're going to entrust us with these funds, but we want you to see that, change is happening with the money that you're
Yeah.
giving. Another thing that was happening during this time when United Way, nationally was changing is donors have become more sophisticated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even younger donors, other donors, really want to see what's happening with the money that I'm giving to a nonprofit.
Hmm.
So it's interesting being in Charlotte now, but Hugh McCall and Bank of America made a major investment in early childhood education.
Mm.
And that was I had I call her my spirit guide in Martinsville, Virginia. She
Mm.
said, Kathy, you should apply for this money so that we can look at early childhood development
Yeah.
in a meaningful way. And it was an initiative called Success by Six. And that was our first time, ever getting a grant, not just getting
Mm.
corporate and individual funding that we then funneled to different organizations. So we were very intentional. Early childhood was our first initiative that we focused on. We became a model for other communities throughout the state of Virginia. In rural communities, kith and kin care is so important. A lot of families take their child to someone's home.
Yeah.
So that was where we focused a lot of our efforts to help make these home daycare providers the best that they could be, whether it was physical changes or trainings and education. Some of these providers, their kids were entering kindergarten, knowing the continents, knowing how to speak different languages. I mean, they
Hmm.
were ready to go. And that's
Yeah.
what early childhood is about, setting children up for success when they enter school,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so that we're all on this even playing field, right?
Right.
When we're in
Right.
kindergarten.
It's
So,
so important to get um, that opportunity to at least start on that level playing field in your
yeah,
youth. It won't
exactly.
always work out that way in high school and beyond, but that part is critical
Yeah,
to at least give them the opportunity. Where it goes from there, it's
that's
often
right.
up to other circumstances out of our control. But
Yeah.
I,
We were,
I'd love to go back to something you said earlier about the sophistication of the donors.
mhm.
Um, there's a question that popped in my head as you were saying that, and there's this interesting debate throughout nonprofit communities as I do some consulting as well, where donors are sophisticated. They want to see the outcomes. If I'm giving you $500, I'm giving you $1,000. I want to know where that money's going, how it's
Right.
actually impacting folks. However, as you're delivering those numbers, there's also this kind of, I wouldn't call it battle, just a struggle to explain that there is a need for overhead.
Yes.
There are people who are delivering the services that you have to pay for. They have to have a living wage, and quite frankly, if they're doing well, you want to make sure that they're well taken care of. So I'm curious what your experience in having that conversation. Like if you had a megaphone, and we put Kathy on the stage to talk to donors who are concerned about so much overhead to get the job done. What would that conversation sound like, Kathy?
Well, first of all, I think that when you're in front of a business person, they need to understand that a nonprofit is a business and
Yeah.
needs to be run by a business, like a business. And that means having capable staff in place to run that business.
Right.
It's funny, particularly at United Way and in smaller United Ways, a lot of donors didn't feel like a director of United Way should be paid anything. It should be a volunteer position. And what I would
Mm.
always point to was to look at the success of the organizations that had a paid staff and the outcomes that we were achieving. Those don't happen through osmosis or something. It takes everyone on that team. Now, you do need to be cognizant of how much your overhead is.
Mm-hmm.
And, with an organization like MHA, so many of our team were staff that were out in the community doing education. They were helping families and children out in the community. They were heading up a counseling center. They
Mm-hmm.
were raising awareness about mental health and even the ED. I think a good leader is out in the community as well.
Right.
Not just doing the day to day, keeping the lights on, although that's important. But I felt very much like I needed to be out in those communities we were serving for
Yeah.
them to see me as well as my education team or parent voice team, or even at the museum I worked at, the exhibition team. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be the face of the work that's taking place
Yeah.
at your nonprofit.
Agreed.
And you need to wear a lot of different hats. You need to be in front of the corporate leader. You need to be in front of the donor. You might need to be, in front of that person that's needing your services. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where empathy is important.
Yeah.
I think you need to be able to connect as a nonprofit leader with so many different individuals and people that we all bring our biases to
Yeah.
life and to what we
Mm-hmm.
do. But if we're sitting around a table of corporate folks, or if we're sitting around a table of people who are in a focus group giving you input on the work you're trying to do, you need to put yourself in where they're coming from. And it's a different conversation in the boardroom as it is in the schoolroom. So
Yeah.
it's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I remember some of those conversations and nonprofits that I worked with, the ability for the head of an organization or a division to be out in the field and have the conversation with people in the community was essential for
Yes.
buy-in. We were
Mhm.
working on a really cool mental health project in Kentucky. I was told later by the partners that we were working with to help house, educate, you name it,
Mhm.
for those who were in need. Um, I was told that I was the first person of the organization of this particular project that had gone out and faced,
Mhm.
people in the community specifically about this, and that was a key to opening the
Yeah.
door because they saw somebody from corporate, so to speak,
Right.
come down and speak to people as if they were human and
And
not,
it means so much.
absolutely, absolutely, and it carries so much weight with them to know that they're speaking to a person and not, another cog in the wheel.
And you talked about trust, and
Yeah.
when you're trying to create a collaborative relationship, you do have to build that trust, because if it's several nonprofits in the room together, we all have our revenue that we need to meet and expenses we
Hmm.
need to pay. But if we stay focused on collectively on our mission, what are we trying to do with this collaborative relationship?
Right.
Then it becomes about the community versus me and my
Yeah.
outfit.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. There's so many partnerships formed through simple conversation. I'm curious, with your experience, you have mentioned private sector, but we haven't touched on government, which
Hmm.
I learned was a very different animal in, in my
Yeah.
experience. So I would love to have you touch on, just for a moment, what it's like to collaborate with local government on enhancing community impact.
I think if you have a good partnership with your government entities, they can be a real create catalyst, a real change agent with you. I always talk to my board about the fact that we have kind of envisioned this three-legged stool where you have government, the private sector, and nonprofit. And if you don't have all three, you don't have a stable community. They all need
Right.
to be strong. And, after the pandemic or during the pandemic, so much money came through government.
Hmm.
Um, and we were fortunate here in Mecklenburg County. They really were looking at where the greatest needs were, and behavioral health was one of those places where they saw a need. So I believe that government can be a really great partner for you.
Yeah.
When I was at Piedmont Arts, I was executive director for an arts organization. Um, we had a beautiful piece of property but it was just languishing, and nothing was being done with it. And we partnered with the city of Martinsville to create an art garden. So
Mm.
they had a great grant writer who had written these federal grants before. They helped with everything from electrical to other things that needed to be done on this space. So uh, I think if you go with your ducks in a row and can let them see how valuable this is to the community, government can be an amazing partner for you. We don't need to see government as
Yeah.
being getting in the way of progress,
Gotcha.
although sometimes there can be some red tape.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I would imagine all basically all experiences will encounter some red tape
Yeah,
just to get it running. But yeah, it when you've got the right people in positions, generally speaking, when you have the right people in positions, um, things tend to run more smoothly.
yeah,
And when you're dealing with government, which has such a big impact on individual lives, especially when we're talking about the underserved in our communities,
right.
it's just so much easier when you got people who have that vision of serving, just not positions of power, so to speak. I loved what I was hearing your last few statements, Kathy, and I look at all of the strategy and thought that you put into building those partnerships outside of your organization.
Hmm.
I wonder um, how you fostered a culture of collaboration within the organizations you've led, and how did this culture contribute to those organizations' success?
That's a really good question, and I think sometimes our teams can see some of these partnership things as extra work.
Hmm.
And so we have to show them how this really is driving our work and our success. Um, because the more we're out there with the community, the more people are going to learn about your programs. They're going to take advantage of your programs. Uh, with MHA, going to churches and is a great place to begin to overcome stigma and educate people about the different issues
Mhm.
around mental health.
Yeah.
But it takes it may take some extra work that we're not, outside of teaching a class or doing counseling or putting up an art exhibit or
Mm.
raising money for United Way, whatever it is. It may be seen as I've got to go out to this event or this thing or this that, may not fit your typical day to day, but you have to show. And that goes back also to modeling as a leader, the behavior that you want to see, that
Yeah.
I'm willing to go and do some of these outreach events or help you teach that class or lead this facilitation with this group.
Hmm.
Um, but I also think as leaders, we need to, going back to trust, we need to trust our teams and delegate to them. And over the years, I've seen some amazing leaders emerge out of maybe they're facilitating a group conversation with child care providers or, really helping them to, rethink how they do their work. It's
Yeah.
always exciting to see. So, just like any behavior we want from our team, if we're not modeling it, you're not going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the modeling part is very important. I think also reminding them kind of the vision
That's
of the
right. Tying it
organization
back to your vision.
is always important, because there are going to be the days that are
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that people only see maybe 25% of the positive things you're doing.
That's right.
I've been a part
Hmm.
of so many wonderful nonprofits, whether it be a member of the team in a leadership position or even consulting, where yes, people see the numbers. Oh my gosh, you had this
Hmm.
many people you served, and this many
Hmm.
people, changed their lives. But
Yeah.
you can't really put in that annual report. Look at all the work we did to get here. Look what it took.
That's
Look how many obstacles we
yeah.
got over, and that takes energy and effort and drive and all the things that don't necessarily get acknowledged except for
Hmm.
maybe in that organization.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
so
You, I
go ahead.
think we have to keep reminding our team too, like you said, what our mission is. And
Hmm.
it's more than just a few lines on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
We nonprofits are dealing with some of the most pressing issues of society.
Yeah.
So you think about mental health. How much is Mental Health America Central Carolina is a fairly small organization, quite frankly, going to move the needle on this issue going it alone. We
Oh,
can't.
yeah.
And we
Yeah.
have to think about community in different ways. It's not just all the other providers out there who are doing this work. It's your stakeholders in those communities, your natural community leaders that people trust, and
Yeah.
really thinking about who can I bring to the table, who's going to help us,
Hmm.
and who we can help in turn, because I can't go into certain communities and establish a trust immediately. I need to have
Right.
those folks at my side who people see every day in that community, who they're going to listen to. So um, these are big issues we're facing in our country,
Yeah.
and we just have to be willing to set aside our pride or ownership that we have in something and see the bigger picture.
Yeah. It's so important that you say that, because it's these big issues that those in the nonprofit community are trying to handle
Hmm.
are enormous, and there is not, for as much data and as many studies as there are out there, there's not a one size fits all approach
Hmm.
for
No.
anything that we're tackling. And so to do this in a way that doesn't simply rely on volunteers, and volunteers are amazing. Please
Mhm.
hear my heart, hear what the actual words I'm saying, folks. Volunteers are critical for organizations, but that's a limited time.
Yeah,
That's a limited amount of time, and it may not be every week. It may not even be every month. It's,
that's
you know,
right.
when they have the ability to help. So I want people to consider this as we're kind of continuing this conversation, especially for Kathy, who is now consulting for nonprofits out there. The average, this was in Pew in 2023, and I'd have to look it up to see if they have numbers for 24. But the average donation in America is 2%
Mhm.
of their income. Now, I understand there are a lot of things economically that we're dealing with now that we weren't maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
That's not a critique on people. I just need you to understand that 2% of donations across the United States are trying to run thousands
that's
of
right.
nonprofits.
Mhm.
And as you alluded to before, people are often working wearing multiple hats. One of the last nonprofits I worked for, it was incredibly difficult. Loved the work, loved the people, but I had to wear, because I was the head of marketing there. But in being the head of marketing, I was running the website, I was writing the content, I was
Yeah,
doing the graphics for social media, I was running social media. You know, all of these things were one person, and if I were lucky, I could, you know, outsource it to somebody and pay a little
right.
bit to have somebody work on this thing so that I could ease my mind
Have
a
a
little
little.
bit, just to do the job. But imagine, you know, across the country, if that donation number lifted just 1%, and how so many of these nonprofits could pull off another miracle, if you will.
Yeah, and I would
Uh,
imagine if you went back and looked at those trends, they probably haven't changed a lot over
yeah,
time.
yeah.
It
I don't doubt that at all. I mean, the number of individuals, when I talk to clients and I ask them about how they've, you know, progressed over the years, yes, they've become wildly strategic. They've figured out different ways to do things that, you know, they couldn't do before. Technology has helped quite a bit, but
Mhm.
it still leaves one individual wearing a minimum of 5 hats
Yes. Mhm.
in various departments. We'll be back with the Unbroken Place in just a moment. Revitalize your brand and accelerate your impact with Eddie and Erica at Elevate One Consulting. Experts in organizational development, digital marketing, and much more. From leadership coaching to creating unforgettable digital experiences, we've got you covered. Visit elevateoneconsulting.com today. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. And we're back. But in speaking to the miracles that I mentioned just a moment ago, can you describe a time when collaboration led to an unexpected positive outcome when you were working?
I'll talk about one example that for me was positive and uplifting was at Piedmont Arts. You,
Mm,
you know, with the arts, we often think that's just for a certain group of people
hmm
that come through the doors and appreciate what you have there. And the couple of times where we lifted up a certain group of people, we had a number of Indian population in our community, and one of our board members was Indian, a lovely woman, and so I went to her and she brought a lot of her friends together and we planned this festival. I remember the henna tattoo, they did the mandala art, and a bunch of her friends had uh, did traditional dancing. But the thing that came out of that that touched my heart the most
hmm
was how proud she and everyone who came to that event, because we had lifted up her community. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's one that just really the arts can lift people in so many different ways, beautiful, positive ways. And by focusing in on their culture,
Hmm.
she felt seen and
Yeah.
her friends felt seen, and the others in our community from that population felt like they were seen. And so
Yeah.
that was a wonderful collaboration. It was,
Hmm.
a short-lived kind of project that we did, but it just made me feel good.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful, Kathy. In fact, I think it's a very important talking point to seeing yourself, being able to see yourself. There are a number of mental health benefits when an individual gets that endorphin shot, of
Mhm.
that moment where you see yourself represented in a positive way.
Right.
I can recall in my teen years, being able to see myself on TV shows
Yeah.
for the first time,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
this is late '80s, and you didn't
Yeah.
see it that much unless it was the robber or the drug addict who needed help.
Right.
It
Mhm.
was ridiculous. But even seeing something as silly as Family Matters, seeing
Mhm.
myself represented made me much more positive in terms of thinking about myself, and oh, I could do this, or I could do that.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
seeing yourself accepted in your community has a very similar thing.
Right.
When
Mhm.
your culture or the way you live life is respected and even honored, it's so important. And I just, it makes me so happy. That was a perfect example. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. I know that your work with GPS, which is your organization now. You do a lot of consulting with nonprofits specifically, and I'm wondering what kind of advice you would give to new nonprofit leaders looking to build strong community relationships.
I think I thought about this a little bit, and I think one thing is to be patient,
Mm,
to be kind to yourself, but also kind to those potential partners that are out there. And, we've all heard go fast, go alone, to go far, go with the others.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
always, throughout my career, thought, oh my gosh, this would be so much easier if, I could just do this.
Yeah.
But in the end, when you took the time to really get to know people who are doing the same work you're doing or who are benefiting from the work that you're doing,
Yeah.
really great things happen through that. I'll go back to the early childhood example. I remember us first getting around the table with providers and nonprofits. There was a lot of distrust. There was a lot of
Mhm.
people feeling threatened around that table because, oh, you're going to take something away from me, or,
Right.
um, and in the end, we created something where at the end, everybody felt good about the work that was being
Yeah.
done. And what happens is more funding comes available
Hmm.
because there's the community is seeing this work as a collective that you're doing, and they're seeing these kids who are doing, ready to go. They can see those tangible successes that you're doing.
Right.
So I think, again, you have to be patient, but, know in the end and stay focused on your mission. One thing I
Hmm.
always advise nonprofit, don't mission creep to get money or bring in people that it doesn't make
Right.
sense, that you're partnering with,
Yeah.
because that just adds more work for you, and you're kind of
Yeah.
treading water and not getting anywhere.
Well,
So,
let me pause this just for a quick second, because I know you understand what mission creep is. I completely understand what mission creep is, as I kind of
yeah.
consult on that very topic many
Well,
times. Unpack that for those who may not know what mission creep is.
I think a lot of times we we become enamored with this grant maybe that's out there that we think that we could get, and maybe you could
Yeah.
get it, but you know, I tell people the easiest thing is getting the grant. Once you get
Hmm.
it, you've got to do the work. Does it
Yeah.
make sense for your organization to apply for this? Is it really dogs moving you
Hmm.
ahead in your mission?
Yeah.
And I've known several times where um, I've been reached out, someone has reached out to me, hey, we've got this opportunity to do this grant, but we need this partner. And it may be
Hmm.
someone you've never even, heard of.
Yeah.
That's another piece of advice. Don't wait until the grant's available to create these partnerships that make sense for you and your mission.
Yeah.
Because in the end, there is a lot of money out there, but if you
Hmm.
don't already have those relationships in place, it's really hard
Yeah.
for you to create that trust, create that, how is this relationship going to work, who's going to do what, when typically, this grant is due next week, that
Yeah.
you're just
Yeah. Yeah.
so so a
Yeah.
lot to think about when these grants become available.
Yeah.
Do I have the infrastructure in place to really be successful with this?
Right.
Because, even going after the ARPA funding for the counseling center, it was scary,
Hmm.
but it fit our mission perfectly.
Right.
It was taking us to another level in caring for the community. I did a presentation for MHA National last year, and someone asked, well, did you think about when the grant isn't available anymore? Because this was multi-year funding.
Hmm.
And this might not be the right answer, but in my mind, if you're doing a really good work and have some faith in yourself and in your organization that you're going to lay the foundation, people are going to see the work that you're doing and the money will follow.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, you really do become irrelevant as an
Hmm.
organization if you don't have vision to, how are we know that these communities need our help. They can't,
Yeah.
they're underinsured, they're uninsured. They you The first lady that came to the counseling center, Miss Juanita,
Hmm.
I left with tears in my eyes because I'm like, this is
Hmm.
happening, this is happening. And it was the kind of person that we really needed to be serving, that this counseling center was set up to serve.
Yeah.
It was just, I probably said it before, but it was just a beautiful thing, to see that happening. And so, again, going back to mission creep, when it's right, it's right. But when you have to really think about it,
Yeah.
maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my own plug for all of the marketing communications directors, managers, coordinators out there, nonprofit leaders. Here's a bit of advice for free. This is Eddie, the consultant, giving a little bit of advice on 20 years of working in the nonprofit space. Invest in your marketing and communications
Mhm.
department. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you why. The metaphor or analogy that I speak on is that you are often like an individual who purchases a Lamborghini or Ferrari and you
Mhm.
leave it in your driveway. No one's seeing
Yeah.
it. No one's hearing about it.
Yeah.
How amazing that thing is. You've got to have somebody who is willing to and able to and skilled at driving that thing in the right communities for people to notice, to stand up and say, wow, that Lamborghini, AKA your organization, is amazing. You have
Yeah.
to invest in that particular department. And just kind of as a best practice, you don't want your writers to be their own editors. You don't
Mhm.
want uh, the web designer to be the web developer. These are
Right.
very distinct skill sets that need help. These individuals in those departments need help. So I would say, as a best practice, to let the world know about your stories, to let the world know these statistical outcomes equals this kind of story.
That's right.
Invest in those storytellers, those professional storytellers for social media and email marketing and all the various things. But yeah, so just a,
I think that's so true, Eddie, and I do
yeah,
think that a lot of times, even in my own experience, it's where we do invest the least amount of work and
yeah,
or the least in our organization. And good marketing, it helps bring people to your organization, but
hmm,
including donors. You
yeah,
know, you get the attention of um, Mackenzie Scott. That was always my dream, that she would drop
mm.
$1 million.
Hey,
That didn't
I would
happen.
take it.
Not yet. So
Yeah, it's and just the cherry on the top of this, folks. I said it in a conversation with therapist Melissa Burnell. I just had that
mhm,
conversation with her a little while ago. I was explaining that we are, and again, these numbers are a few years old, so I'm sure it's
mhm.
ballooned since then. But we are, as individuals, subject to 7,000 brands per day.
Wow.
And this is
Mhm,
whether you're driving your car and you see a bumper sticker or
mhm.
an advertisement or a jingle that comes on, or you look at your phone, you open up your phone, all those
You
apps.
walk outside of the store, and then you've got a text message from that store.
Exactly. So imagine this: you're a nonprofit and you're trying to compete against all that stuff that is
Mhm.
fighting for the
Yeah,
attention of the donor. Having those skilled people in place to help tell that story and compete skillfully against that kind of market it's incredibly important for you to thrive and survive, especially in your own community, let alone nationally. So,
right.
um, but off my soapbox there, the marketing thing it's so important, and I don't think a majority of nonprofit leaders that I speak to don't quite understand what it is until much later and it's laid out for them. So,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
I want to get back to your career just in terms of just looking back at everything that you've accomplished, all the communities that you've helped, all the initiatives that have left a wonderful impact on the community. I'm wondering if there are any particular collaborations or partnerships that stand out as being especially impactful.
I think at each, even the corporate, as I
Mhm.
mentioned, doing the school business partnerships was, impactful in its own way. But one that really, we just gave a little seed money at United Way, but it's a great example of how you can do a little bit to nudge a group and have something really powerful happen. Um, we saw that a lot of people were going from church to church to try to cobble together a utility payment, or to get a
Mm,
little bit of food from the food pantry. And what we were seeing was how humiliating that could be, or how degrading, having to
mm,
go get a little bit here, a little bit there. Um, So we decided, and this was another first for us as United Way, to try to, grant an entity some money, and it was only $5,000. But the local
mhm.
ministerial association, um, we we wanted them to look at some other models in other communities that were happening, where um, there was a one-stop shop for people. And we
Yes.
even, and you talk about resistance, even churches. There was one
Hmm.
big church that was doing a lot of work. They felt threatened by this. And,
Yes.
even I felt personally they were angry at me, but We wanted to bring the Ministerial Association together to examine this. And so out of that little bit of money, Martinsville and Henry County has what's called now the Grace Network, where people can go in. In order to get help there, and I think it's really great how they set this up. They have volunteers who do a little bit of financial literacy with you,
Mm-hmm.
but they give you that full payment that you need for that utility bill or whatever. They also have it where you can go shop for groceries. You're not given a box of food, assuming this is what
Right.
you need. You're able to go into the Grace Network. And how it worked was, at first, I think they had 80 churches in the area. Each
Mm-hmm.
church every month is responsible for some food item.
Yeah.
And we know all churches have different entities in their budget that they give to. So a lot of
Right.
churches started giving to the Grace Network. Tons of volunteers coming together to help these people, better manage their money, in a dignified way. That's
Mm.
where if you teach a man to fish, it's
Yeah.
like so much in all of this work, and I'll get a little emotional thinking about it. It's about human dignity and
Mm.
how do we create solutions for people where they maintain their dignity, where they feel some sense of control in what they're doing. But I think there are over 100 churches now that are supporting this work in this small rural community, and it just shows how you can bring partners together, give them a little bit of money, show them the research your group has done. Can we make this happen?
Yeah.
And they made it happen, and it's been so successful. And that's something I'm really proud of. We walked away from it after it wasn't here, this is yours now. We're just, as United Way, we didn't own it. We just helped, the community to see some solutions and give them a little bit of
Yeah.
seed to do it. But, um, you know, I think that's part of the work that we do is just how do we sustain, you know, something, and the more partners you can bring together to have a stake in what you're doing, the more sustainable it's going to be.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's so wonderful.
I love that. I love that, how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, you hit on a phrase that I was taught early in my nonprofit days. Um, what the VP of this organization that I worked with um, said, there is dignity in the exchange.
Mhm.
And I kind of, that can be taken a few different ways. So I kind of pushed on it, like, what does that mean to you? And he said, well, a lot of times when people go into nonprofit, they go in with the best of intentions.
Right.
I see a problem. I may not be able to diagnose it, but I've got two hands and 2 feet, and I'm gonna, do what I can to make sure that people are served. And so the focus in doing so is noble. The idea of going out and doing that work is beautiful. However, we sometimes, because we're so wrapped up in doing the right work, we forget the other side of the coin is those who are receiving those services and goods.
Exactly.
And there is a dignity that we owe them because they are coming to us, to understand that, in this pull yourselves up by your bootstrap society we live in,
Yeah.
there's a lot that they have to push through in order to just ask for help sometimes.
Exactly. Exactly. You think about people coming to the mental health counseling center,
Mm-hmm.
to get therapy. There's a lot of barriers even before they, they
Right.
make that choice. But if they
Right.
come there, they need to be treated with respect, with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
This all goes back, Eddie, to a lot of what you talk about around empathy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, as leaders, we're not being empathetic. To me, is the most important attribute we need to have.
Yeah.
Because if we're not empathetic, you can't walk into a community that doesn't look like you,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have your background, and open your eyes to what they need or what their strengths are too. We
Mm-hmm.
can't go into a situation thinking, oh, these poor people, they're all human beings with strengths and weaknesses, just like I
Hmm.
have.
Yeah.
So when we go into communities, we need to be, as I said before, looking at those natural leaders, and we don't
Yeah.
know who that is. It may not be the most educated person in that community, but it's someone with a voice that people
Right.
trust, and
Right.
that's who we need to connect with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Perfectly said. Perfectly said, Kathy. I'm curious to know because I worked on something very similar to what you were talking about. I believe you said that it was the Grace Network.
Yeah, like a
Um,
faith-based crisis center
yeah,
almost to
yeah.
help people.
We did something very similar in the Midwest. Unfortunately, I didn't get to finish because the grant
Mhm.
ran out. But we had
Yeah.
started this thing where it was kind of setting up hubs throughout the Midwest where families could go and receive services, just a wide variety of services for free. And it was within their community. And the numbers when they did the longitudinal study, it came out not too long ago, were great, just fabulous
Mhm.
numbers. But um, it makes me start thinking about the future of nonprofit work and um, having an expert like yourself in here is perfect to ask the question of what future trends do you see in nonprofit work, especially regarding community collaboration and how organizations should prepare for these changes.
That's a good question. What we're just talking about is going to continue to be so important. I think from a health and mental health standpoint, corporations and healthcare providers are looking for nonprofits to partner with because they provide Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare may not be able to go into a community
Yeah.
the way that a local nonprofit can or a church. So I think the need for collaboration among, as you said, government, private, not is only going to grow.
Yeah.
So as a nonprofit leader, we need to learn those skills. We need to have those skills. Um, I think it's more and more funders are going to require that you have a collaboration or partnership in place. So that's
Hmm.
something that, any nonprofit leader needs to be looking at the community and not waiting for that funding become available, but to create those partnerships early on.
Yeah.
Um, I, I see trends, and this has been happening, but it seems so easy now to create a nonprofit. I
Mm.
my I'm at United Way. I used to have people call, "Hey, I want to start this nonprofit." My first question was why, you know,
Right. Yeah.
because so I think that we'll probably still see that, but I think that what you need to ask yourself is there somebody else in the community already doing this work?
Yeah.
Um, you know, can I partner with them? Could I put my passion to what they're doing? Rather than create this new entity that has to be supported and sustained.
Yeah.
That trend has been going on, and I think it's just going to continue to grow. Um,
Hmm.
One thing we've seen, if you look at giving trends, you may see that individual giving is down, but I think a lot of that is because now donor advised funds, more wealthy donors, it looks like a foundation gift versus an individual, but that's
Yeah.
usually a family or an individual that's giving.
Hmm.
So I think we're going to continue to see those trends and I need to be asking myself, how do I connect to that donor? What is their interest?
Right.
Everybody's not interested in mental health. I think one trend that nonprofits need to continue to look at is corporate giving,
Mm.
um, and really being able to make the case to a corporation of why the work you're doing is important to them.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, let's think about mental health. We know
Hmm.
that so many people are going to work every day with a mental health diagnosis.
Hmm.
So how do we educate employers about that what's happening with their employees, but also how do we get them to support that work? Because if I'm dealing with an issue or I have a family member who's dealing with a mental health, I may not be as productive, or there may be higher absenteeism.
Right.
If we can help people with mental health issues, we may have safer communities, which is good for corporations. So,
Hmm.
really thinking about how what you're doing translates to what your employees are going through. If I don't have proper or good child care for my child, I'm probably going to be out of
Yep.
work,
Yep.
a couple of days when they're sick, or I don't have some, or the school, closes for
Right.
whatever reason. So, all of these issues are important for corporations to look at, and to be a partner in with nonprofits.
Yeah.
And I think most get it, but I think the trend line is that, you know, everybody's getting more sophisticated. And you mentioned storytelling. We need to be able
Mhm.
to have good storytelling. I think
Yeah.
that's only going to become more and more important. Numbers are good, but what's behind those numbers?
Right.
How did Miss Juanita feel after she got her therapy or got services at the counseling center when she
Yeah.
left?
Yeah.
Uh,
And those numbers with a Miss Juanita are also part of. I love the term ripple effect. I
mhm.
stole it. I can't say I
Yeah.
stole it, but I borrowed it from a dear friend of mine, Dr. Stephanie Romero,
Hmm.
um, because the term is so perfect. You think about when you throw the rock in the pond, there's a ripple effect beyond where that little pebble hit
That's
in
right.
the
Yeah.
water. And the same happens with a Miss Juanita when she is
Mhm.
well. Think about the family unit, how that family unit is uplifted. And if that
Yeah.
family unit is uplifted, there's a better chance that they can impact, parts of their community.
Yeah.
And there's just a ripple effect that goes out. And I tell often the organizations as they consider their strategy, well, think about when you partner or donate to an organization, how that's going to impact not just the people that you're hoping to uh, collaborate with outside of your
Hmm.
walls,
Yeah.
but how it impacts people inside as well. The people that you're hiring, bringing in.
That's right. Hmm.
There's a number of ways in which I won't say it's untapped, but we could certainly dig a little deeper to tell that story as well,
Yeah.
through how
Yeah.
powerful those partnerships can
Yeah.
be.
I'm sure that Miss Juanita, she had a good experience. I think she did.
Hmm.
Also feels more comfortable talking in her community about her mental
Yeah.
health and
Oh,
how important it is to care for your mental health.
yeah.
I think about, working with children. There are so many systems around a child that in fact
Hmm.
impact a child.
Yeah.
What kind of ripple effect does that have when you're really looking around the child? You know, it's not it's not just the direct contact you have with that child,
Right.
it's all those systems around them. So,
Yeah.
it's a lot of complexity to these issues, but
Hmm.
there are a lot of avenues we can go to impact these issues as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, Kathy, this has been absolutely amazing. It's so great to speak with you again. And
Well, it's great to
uh,
talk to you, Eddie. I
yeah.
learned so much from you, and just appreciate your support as we have this community
Yeah.
of people working with nonprofits and trying to do the best that we can in for me a new journey
Hmm.
as I have retired.
Yeah. Well, so, sort
Got
of
bored,
in
got
some
bored
way.
pretty quick. So,
Yeah, I don't believe you retired. I think that you just shifted the way you work. Let's just put it that way.
right,
But
right.
but
Mhm.
so you have a lot of expertise and a lot of experience to share with those who are either starting a nonprofit or currently engaged with a nonprofit or just trying to figure out how to expand
Mhm.
their services or what they're offering to the community. So is there a way for people to engage with Rogers GPS or follow your work, support your work that you could share?
Yeah, so I have a website, rogersgps.com, that people can go to and learn more about me. And they can connect with me on the site. I really do want to help nonprofits with a variety of things. Strategic planning. I mentioned I'm not
Mhm.
into long term, but really trying to help nonprofits think strategically and
Yeah.
to set some of those broad goals that they may need. Financial stability and board development, which is so
Oh,
important to be
yes.
successful. Um, you know, those are kind of the things that I'm focused on. Writing a blog because it's just sort of my creative outlet. I like to write,
Hmm.
and my most recent blog was focused on mental health issues, and now I'm focused on leaning into leadership. So there's a lot of
Awesome.
aspects to being any kind of leader.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm trying to raise up some of those issues each
Yeah.
month through my business. So
Awesome. Awesome. And she's on LinkedIn as well, folks. You
that's
can
right.
find her on
Mm.
LinkedIn. Always has insightful articles. She's always out in the community meeting with people as well. So it's a good source for knowledge and resources there as well. So, well, thank you
Yeah.
again
Oh,
for
thank
coming
you,
on.
Eddie. It's been so great to
Yeah,
be with you. And sorry about my little Bichon, Eddie.
that is all right. All right.
So I hope you have a great.
The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show was produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Little Glass Men in Captive Portal. We want to thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @UnbrokenPlace. You can also find some helpful resources at eddypaulthomas.com. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love. At the Say Something Studios division of Elevate One Consulting, we don't just build websites, we craft unforgettable digital experiences. Imagine a place where design, development, UX, SEO, and management harmonize to elevate your brand to unprecedented exposure. A place where your website is not just seen, but felt, experienced, and remembered. Our expert team, equipped with unparalleled marketing insight, turns the everyday task of website design and management into a seamless, empowering journey. With Elevate One, you're not just launching a website, you're embarking on a transformative business adventure. We meticulously design every aspect, from intuitive navigation to stunning graphics, ensuring your digital space authentically represents your business ethos. Ready to transform your online presence into a thriving digital masterpiece? Visit us now at www.elevateoneconsulting.com and start your journey to digital excellence. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Say Something Studios.